Hey everyone, it's the Grumpy Meeple, and I am back with another in my Grumpy Hobby Hacks video series. This time we're going to be talking about a subject that's very near and dear to my heart and a source of much kind of consternation, time and effort and money over the last 6-7 years, and that is board game organization. So I'm going to be walking you through the various tools and kind of items that I use to organize my games. But it goes beyond that because really I think that the combination of these things in particular can basically organize any game. So I'm calling this video the last board game organization video you will ever need. So why now? Why has this come up this fine sunny Sunday morning? So basically people have been talking about it. I've been thinking about making this video for a while. This is something of a passion of mine, like I said, and an aspect of the hobby that I dove really deep into when I first got into it. And I've just seen people, making videos about it. Side Game LLC has like a running series of videos where he shows how to organize games, and I saw him also on Board Game Co. with Alex Radcliffe, where they were talking about like the top 10 games we'd play if they had better inserts, I think was the name of it. And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, man, these guys, like, all right, we've heard from the amateurs. Now it's time for the pros to step up. So what makes me a pro? Why do I think that I know a lot about this, or why am I the person to talk about it? So over the next couple of minutes, seconds, whatever, you should be seeing basically a slideshow of just a fraction of the different storage boxes, tackle boxes, bins, bags, jewelry cases that I've purchased over the last 5, 6, 7 years as I tried to figure out the best way to store these games. So why am I an expert? Just from the sheer amount of time, money, and brain power I've spent on this. Honestly, it's hard to imagine anybody sitting around thinking about this stuff more than I have. I mean, and it's an interesting kind of mix of reasons as to why I got into it. I got into the hobby and I started right away with a game that's a real pain in the butt to organize, and that's X-Wing. And so it was clear to me, like right off the bat, like this isn't going to work. Like throwing this stuff back in the box or even into baggies, not going to work. We're going to need something different. And so I started playing around with tackle boxes and little kind of, I was buying this stuff like in bulk practically at one point. Every kind of plastic container with a divider in it that you've ever seen at Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Target, Home Depot. I've bought a variation of probably all of them, tried them all, and over the years I really kind of refined my process and found the ones that I find really work the best and are most useful for the most games, basically. So, like I said, I've just had a lot of experience with this particular topic because I've done it a lot, and I've gotten a lot of compliments from people on Facebook or at game nights saying, wow, this is an incredible organization, and so I kind of feel like I know what I'm talking about. In terms of kind of why I fell into this side of the hobby, I think there's a little bit of an aspect of like OCD, like being a little bit of a control freak. My wife likes to say that this was like a symptom or a reaction to the birth of our son, because he was our first kid, and I like kind of an orderly, neat like everything in its place kind of lifestyle. And children are a physical manifestation of chaos and are the antithesis of all that is ordered and reasoned and under control. So she thinks that I dove into this as like a defense mechanism to the birth of our son and him just destroying everything. That this little box here is one thing that I could perfectly organize exactly how I wanted it, and that just spread to the rest of my games basically. So, a quick disclaimer: who is this video not for? Okay, this video is not for the casual organizer or casual board game player. You're going to find that most of the things that I talk about here, they're not really applicable to stuff like, your kind of target level games, Splendor, the Pandemic even to some extent really doesn't require this kind of lift. Your basic kind of Ticket to Ride is another great example of something that really kind of doesn't need this much rigor put into it. This is mostly for exactly the kind of games I cover on this channel. Heavy, large Ameritrash games with thousands of components. It's also not for hardcore Calyx owners. Some of the things that I'm going to show you here will not fit into a Calyx, and I want to be very clear about that. I don't want people running out and buying any of this stuff and then going, hey, what the hell, this doesn't fit in a Calyx. I know it doesn't fit in a Calyx. That's why I don't use a Calyx to organize my stuff. I use those large kind of like garage storage racks that you can get at like Home Depot, like big industrial, like powdered steel racks. I use those because all this stuff will fit onto those. So if you're obsessed with your Calyx, this might not be the thing for you. You could always, pull out a couple of very tricky games and organize them this way, maybe put them on top of the Calyx or something, but if you're wanting to just slide this stuff in right next to each other, it's probably not going to work. It's also not for people who are trying to minimize the footprint of their game. That's not my goal here. We're going to talk about my goals, but getting this smaller is not necessarily my objective. So bear that in mind. It's not for people who want to fit the game back into the box. That's not going to happen. I could care less about that. Half the time I end up just sticking the box in storage. And so if you want it back in the box on the shelf, looking very nice and neat and pretty, go somewhere else. It's also not for people who don't want to spend any money. Now, most of the things that I'm going to show you, taken in moderation, which I did not take it in moderation when I got into this. I spent like $1,000 on them. Various organizers and stuff. I have piles of them. You saw the images. But taken in moderation, this is going to generally be considerably cheaper than something like Broken Token, if you're using that to organize. And I think it's going to organize the game better anyways. So, that said, it's not free. These things range in cost from, $2 to $25 per bin. So if you're trying to do this on the cheap, this probably won't work for you either. And then finally, there are aspects of this storage system that won't appeal to and should not be used by like hardcore miniature painters, people who are actually painting their miniatures and want them to stay in the condition that they're in. Because while I do have a solution for that, typically I don't paint my miniatures, and you're going to see how I store them, and it's not meant for painted, like even tabletop quality miniatures. So just bear all those disclaimers in mind. All right, so who is this for then? Or kind of what are the benefits of the system that I've come up with? The number one benefit and the reason that I do this is control. Iron-fisted control of where every single component of your game is. If you're looking for that, if you don't want to be the guy who's digging around in a box, guy or gal, digging around in a box looking for a health token, this is for you. I promise you, you can go as far as you want with this to where you have an individual bin for every single type of component that comes with any game, basically. And so if you crave that organization, if you want to be able to get this stuff at a table quicker, this may well be for you. Ease of setup and teardown, I kind of just touched on this. This is going to dramatically, in some cases, reduce the time it takes you to get your game to the table. and it's going to reduce dramatically the time it takes you to clean it up and the time it takes you to set it up the next time. This is like a common problem in board games. You go to game night, you plop out a game, and like Gloomhaven, I can't imagine anybody trying to play Gloomhaven at game night, but I'm sure it happens. And then by the end of the night, you just have this pile of crap everywhere, and inevitably you're tired and half drunk, and so you just end up dumping it into the box, and then the next time you come to take it out, it's like a recurring horrible task that you have to, go through, like a little ritual you have to go through every time you want to play your damn game. That's not going to happen if you have this system and if you kind of stick to it. Minimal table presence. This is going to minimize the amount of stuff that's on the table. It's going to take up less room. It's going to be more orderly on the table, and you're going to find you're going to lose less stuff, drop less stuff, misplace less stuff, because it's all organized and you know where it's supposed to be. Another aspect of most of these items that is kind of a strength is protection. Basically, a lot of this stuff is going to be hard plastic, virtually indestructible in day-to-day use. You would really have to kind of be trying to break it. Even if you have kids and they get a hold of some of these things, they're not going to have the weight to put behind, to bust this stuff up. So you're getting a lot of protection. You're getting ease of transport too in some ways. Like if I were flying somewhere and I wanted to take a really big game with me, like, I don't know, like Zombicide, I could probably get the bulk of Zombicide into one of these storage solutions, and it's going to fare a lot better on a plane than a cardboard box it's going to. Or even if you're just taking it to game night, some of these solutions you could fit 5, 6, 7, 10 games into. So if you want to take a pile of games to game night instead of just a single game, this might work out for you. Modularity and flexibility is another really kind of strong strength of this system. This system will work on any game. It's going to fit everything from Gloomhaven to Las Vegas, aspects of it will at least, to Zombicide Invader. I have a box from over here. Whatever the game, Madara, Sword and Sorcery, I've organized all the biggest, most nightmarish organizational challenges in board games, and this system will work for any of them. So extreme flexibility and modularity. And the ability to repurpose this stuff, right? This is the problem with something like Folded Space or Broken Token. While I do like them, they're only good for one game. Your Broken Token for Gloomhaven is worthless in any other context. So if you buy it and you decide to get rid of this game, you're selling that as well. And you got to talk somebody into paying you back for that, or just lose a bunch of money. And you can't use it for anything else. Some of the things I'm going to show you, they are craft boxes, they are tool boxes. They have functions outside of organizing board games. And this was important to me because, like I said, I dumped a lot of money on this stuff, and I want to know that I can use the same thing for organizing my kids' Matchbox cars or Legos that I use for organizing my board games in case I, kind of fall out of the industry, which I don't think is going to happen. So price is another kind of strong aspect of my solution here. It's going to be considerably cheaper for the most part to organize your average game than something like Veldhair, Foam, or Broken Token. Folded Space is pretty reasonably priced and has some strengths of this system, and I'll show you that here in a bit. But in general, this is going to be a lot cheaper than buying those things, and it's also going to be a lot more available. You can walk into a Home Depot and buy half of this stuff, and if your Home Depot is next to a Hobby Lobby, you can get it all in one trip. This is important when you're constantly adding games to your collection, and if you're like me, I don't really like to play a game until I have it at least somewhat organized. You're punching all this crap out, it's everywhere, you gotta get it organized. You get up, maybe you don't have a store. I don't have a store locally that sells Broken Token stuff, and I've been to every board game store within a 200-mile radius of my house, and I'm telling you, there's not a single one that sells Broken Token. So this, you can go down the street and pick up a new storage solution for your new hot, huge Madara style, giant RPG, and be ready to go. So those are the strengths of my kind of process. And before I move on, I just wanted to point out that, I do use a variety of things. And one thing that I do use on occasion is folded space. So I have the folded space for Lords of Waterdeep here. Let me make some room on the old table-looski here. Lords of Waterdeep. This is a great game. I had this custom organized because it got played a lot and it has a lot of chits and it's a pain in the butt. I was never going to buy the broken token because, as I understand it, the box doesn't completely close if you have the broken token. I might be wrong about that. This is years ago that I decided to get this thing. But I wanted the box to be able to close perfectly, and I didn't want to spend $60 on an organizer for it. So I did pick up the folded space for this. And so if there are games where there's a built-in organization system that will fit into the box that is reasonably priced and not going to take me forever to find or build, I will just buy that. So Marvel Champions is another game that I use a folded space insert for. But you can see this is pretty great. I don't know how this stuff got floating around. That's not happened before. But you've got everything separated out in these cool little cardboard bins, which is really all you need. It's a really smart idea on folded space's part, because these big heavy wood organizers, they're just not necessary. Who the hell wants to buy an organizer that you have to stain? Like, I know there are people out there who do want to buy that, and I'm not one of those people. And I've found that these work perfectly. So if there's a game like a middleweight game, and when I say middleweight, I mean in terms of components, not in terms of complexity, like Lords of Waterdeep, Pandemic, and there's a folded space alternative for it, I highly recommend them. I use them myself. So just an example. I'm not, dogmatic about my personal solutions that I've found. I just found that there isn't a good solution for a lot of games, and so I had to make